Imagine for a moment that your life is a ship at sea. The waters aren't always calm. Some days the waves are gentle, and you can see the horizon clearly. Other days, the wind shifts without warning, the sky darkens, and you find yourself in the middle of a storm. Those storms are your emotions: anger, fear, excitement, disappointment. They're powerful, they're unpredictable, and they can take you off course if you let them. Most of us were never taught how to steer in those conditions. Hew in those conditions. We were taught how to work harder, how to set goals, how to push forward, but not how to manage the very thing that often determines whether we sink or sail: our emotional discipline. Our emotional discipline. Because here's the truth: success, happiness, relationships, leadership, they're not determined by the absence of emotion. They're shaped by our ability to guide those emotions, to channel them, to keep them from making decisions we'll regret. Emotional discipline is not about being cold or detached. It's not about suppressing what you feel. It's about mastering the art of feeling fully while still choosing wisely. It's about knowing that emotions are messengers, not masters. It's about slowing down enough to make choices that align with your values, not just your impulses. And it's about building the strength to stand steady when everything around you is pulling you in 100 different directions. If you can learn this, if you can practice it until it becomes second nature, everything changes. The storms don't stop, but you start steering with confidence. You stop being at the mercy of your feelings, and you start using them to propel you forward. And that's when you discover something extraordinary. Emotional discipline doesn't just change how you handle the moment, it changes the entire course of your life. Most people live as though their emotions are in the driver's seat, dictating every turn, every decision, every reaction. We feel anger, so we lash out. We feel fear, so we retreat. We feel excitement, so we make a rash commitment without thinking it through. But here's the truth: emotions were never meant to be your master. They were meant to be your messenger. They show up to tell you something about your inner world or your environment, not to seize control of the steering wheel. The problem is, we've been conditioned to treat our emotions like commands rather than clues. Think about it. When you're hungry, that's a feeling. But hunger doesn't force you to eat the very first thing you see. If you're trying to eat healthy, you might still feel hunger and choose a salad instead of a donut. You're acknowledging the feeling, but you're not enslaved by it. That's how we should approach all emotions. They're signals, indicators, a kind of feedback system. Anger might be telling you something feels unfair. Fear might be telling you there's uncertainty ahead. Excitement might be telling you there's opportunity on the horizon. But none of these feelings should make your decisions for you. One of the biggest mistakes we make is confusing how I feel with what I should do. We say things like, I didn't feel like going to the gym, so I skipped it, or I felt insulted, so I fired back a text. We justify actions purely based on emotion, as if emotions were always aligned with our best interest. But emotions are not truth. They're data. And just like any data, you have to interpret it before you decide what to do with it. Imagine running a business and making every decision purely on one day's sales numbers. That would be chaos. You'd pivot every single day, never building anything sustainable. Life works the same way. Now, this doesn't mean ignoring your emotions. Suppressing them is just as dangerous as obeying them blindly. If you ignore your emotions, they tend to leak out in unhealthy ways. What I'm talking about is acknowledgement without surrender. You can feel angry without acting in anger. You can feel afraid without letting fear choose your path. You can feel joy without losing your head in a moment of impulse. The skill is learning to step back, observe the emotion, name it, and then ask yourself, what's the wisest response here? That's the first step to emotional discipline. Becoming the observer rather than the puppet. The greatest leaders, the people we admire most, aren't emotionless. They feel deeply. They get scared, frustrated, even insecure, but they've learned to translate their emotions into productive action. They hear the message without letting it dictate the mission. When Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for 27 years, do you think he never felt rage, despair, or hopelessness? Of course he did. But instead of letting those emotions master him, he treated them as signals. signals to keep his vision alive, to find meaning in hardship, to prepare for the day he'd walk free and lead his country. And the good news? This isn't a trait you're either born with or without. It's a skill. You're born without. It's a skill. You can train yourself to recognize emotions for what they are. Next time you feel overwhelmed, don't say, I am angry. Say, I am feeling anger. It's a subtle shift, but it separates your identity from the emotion. You're not the storm, you're the sky it's passing through. That small change gives you the space to decide rather than react. I've met people who say, well, I can't help it. That's just how I am. But that's not who they are. That's just a habit. And habits can change. Just because you've always let emotions run the show doesn't mean they always have to. Every time you pause before reacting, you're rewiring your brain. You're teaching it that it doesn't have to leap into action the second a feeling shows up. You're building the mental muscle to choose your response. Think of emotional discipline as the difference between a thermostat and a thermometer. A thermometer only reports the temperature. It changes instantly with the environment. If it's hot, it says it's hot. If it's cold, it says it's cold. It's reactive. It's reactive. A thermostat, on the other hand, sets the temperature. No matter what the room feels like at the moment, it works to bring it back to the level it's set to. When you treat emotions as messengers, you become the thermostat of your life. You set the tone, the energy, the course, regardless of the climate around you. And here's why this matters so much. Every area of your life, your relationships, your career, your health, your legacy, hinges on the quality of your decisions. If your decisions are constantly hijacked by whatever emotion is strongest in the moment, you'll build a life that swings wildly between extremes. But when you let your values lead and your emotions inform, you build something steady, purposeful, and resilient. You will still feel the full range of emotions. You'll still get knocked off balance sometimes, but you won't stay there. You'll know how to listen without obeying. You'll see the message for what it is and then choose the response that serves your future, not just your feelings. Just your feelings. Because at the end of the day, the people who change the world, whether in their families, their communities, or on a global scale, are the ones who have mastered this truth. Emotions are a signal, not a sentence. Listen to them, but don't let them lead you. We live in a world that rewards speed, quick replies, instant decisions, immediate reactions. And while there are moments where speed matters when it comes to emotions, speed is usually the enemy. Most of our biggest regrets come from the moments we reacted too quickly, when we let frustration hit us send, when we let fear say a no, when we let excitement say yes before counting the cost. The truth is, the faster we react, the less we think, and when we don't think, we surrender control. Well, that's why the pause is so powerful. It sounds simple, even boring, but in that small gap between what happens and how you respond lies your greatest leverage. It's the space where your brain catches up with your heart. Ew. It's the moment where your principles can step in before your emotions run off with the wheel. People often think discipline is about self-denial, but at its core, discipline is about self-control. And self-control is born in that pause. Here's the thing. Your brain has two systems for decision making. There's the fast, emotional system that's all about survival. It's what makes you jump when you hear a loud noise or swerve when a car drifts into your lane. That system is great for emergencies, but it's terrible for relationships, leadership, or long-term success. Then there's the slower, more deliberate system. That's the part of you that weighs consequences, considers options, and keeps the bigger picture in mind. The problem is that slower system needs a moment to kick in. If you react instantly, it never gets the chance. When you delay your reaction, even by a few seconds, you shift the balance. You give yourself permission to think. You give yourself time to ask, is this the kind of person I want to be? Is this response going to help or hurt? Will I be proud of this decision tomorrow? That's not weakness. That's strength. Because anyone can snap back. Anyone can let their emotions dictate their next move. But it takes courage to stop, breathe, and choose instead of react. Choose instead of react. This pause isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's not about pretending you're fine when you're not. It's about making sure your response is intentional, not impulsive. I've seen people transform their entire careers, save relationships, and repair trust simply because they learned to build a small buffer between feeling and action. That buffer is like shock absorption for life. It takes the force of the moment and softens it before it causes damage. I remember talking to a leader who told me his best piece of advice came from his grandmother. She said, never answer an important question when you're angry. Sleep on it. At the time, he thought it was old fashioned wisdom, maybe even a little outdated. But after one too many times where a quick retort burned a bridge, he realized she was right. Anger distorts, fear exaggerates, excitement blinds. Given enough time, the fog lifts, and you can see more clearly. And when you can see clearly, you make better calls. Of course, this isn't easy. Your emotions will push for immediacy. They'll whisper, "You have to say something right now." They'll convince you that waiting is weakness or that the moment will pass if you don't seize it instantly. But here's what's fascinating. When you train yourself to wait, you often find the urgency was never real. The text didn't have to be answered in 2 minutes. The decision didn't have to be made before lunch. The conversation could have waited an hour, a day, even a week. And that breathing room allows you to align your actions with your values instead of your mood. Think about the last time you said something you wished you could take back. If you had paused, if you had counted to 10, gone for a walk, or even taken one deep breath, would the outcome have been different? Most of us already know the answer. That's why this isn't just theory, it's a skill we can practice. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, the pause isn't forced. It's instinctive. The pause also gives you power in situations where others lose theirs. When everyone else is panicking, your calm stands out. When everyone else is defensive, your thoughtfulness earns respect. People start to trust you, not because you never feel, but because they know you'll think before you act. That kind of trust is priceless. It's what opens doors, deepens relationships, and makes your voice worth listening to. Some of the most impactful leaders in history weren't the ones who spoke first, they were the ones who listened longest. They understood that the first reaction is rarely the best reaction. They knew that by waiting, they could gather more information, understand different perspectives, and respond in a way that not only solved the problem, but strengthened the bond between people. Every one of us has triggers, those moments, words, or situations that flip an emotional switch inside us. Sometimes we know exactly what they are, and sometimes they catch us completely off guard. Maybe it's a certain tone of voice, a bit of criticism, an unexpected delay, or a person who always seems to push your buttons. And the thing about triggers is, they rarely bring out the best in us. If unchecked, they provoke reactions that we later regret. We snap, we shut down, we overreact. And then we find ourselves cleaning up the mess, wondering why we let it happen again. Here's the reality. You might not be able to eliminate every trigger from your life, but you absolutely can decide how you respond to them. The key is to replace those automatic, emotionally charged reactions with purposeful actions that reflect who you want to be, not just how you feel in the moment. That's the work of emotional discipline. It's not about removing the spark, it's about controlling what it ignites. The first step is awareness. You can't change what you don't notice. Start paying attention to the moments you lose your composure. Look for patterns. Is there a specific environment that stirs your frustration? Is there a certain kind of feedback that makes you defensive? Is there a time of day when you're more likely to overreact because you're tired or stressed? The more you can identify the circumstances that trigger you, the more prepared you'll be to meet them with intention instead of impulse. Once you know your triggers, you can prepare a plan. This is where purposeful action comes in. If you know criticism tends to set you off, decide ahead of time that your first step will be to listen without defending yourself. If you know traffic tests your patience, choose to use that time to listen to an inspiring podcast or reflect on your goals. If you know certain people thrive on provoking you, commit to staying calm and disengaging rather than taking the bait. It's not about pretending the frustration isn't there. It's about giving it somewhere productive to go. This isn't easy because triggers tap into something deeper. They're often tied to our pride, our insecurities, or our past experiences. That's why the automatic reaction feels so strong. It's not just about what's happening now, it's about what that moment represents to you. But the good news is, once you understand the story behind your trigger, you have a choice. You can either let it run the show, or you can write a new ending. Purposeful actions don't have to be big, dramatic gestures. Sometimes they're as small as taking a breath before you speak, counting to 5 before you respond, or excusing yourself from a heated conversation until you've cooled down. Sometimes it's replacing the thought, "Ooh, they're disrespecting me," with, "Maybe they're having a bad day." That tiny shift changes your posture, your tone, and the direction the moment takes. The beauty of this practice is that every time you replace a trigger driven reaction with an intentional action, you weaken the grip the trigger has over you. You teach yourself that you're not powerless. You prove that you can feel the heat without letting it burn everything around you. And over time, you'll notice something incredible. The same situations that used to derail you barely affect you anymore. You'll still notice the spark, but it won't ignite the same kind of fire. Oh, what's more, people will notice the difference. The colleague who used to get under your skin will start to realize they can't shake you. The friend who used to push your buttons won't get the same satisfaction from trying. And the people who look up to you will see an example worth following, someone who refuses to be ruled by the worst moments of their emotions. This is also where your values become a compass. If your value is respect, then no matter how disrespectful someone else might be, your response should still reflect respect. If your value is patience, then your actions should model patience even when it's tested. When you anchor your actions to values instead of feelings, you rise above the emotional noise and act in a way that aligns with your long-term character, not your short-term frustration. And here's something important. This isn't about perfection. You'll still get triggered. You'll still slip up sometimes. But every time you choose a purposeful action instead of a reactive one, you're moving in the right direction. You're building a pattern of behavior that reflects your best self, even in your hardest moments. Because at the end of the day, emotional discipline isn't about never being triggered. It's about what you do after the trigger is pulled. And when you choose purpose over impulse, you take back control, not just of the moment, but of the kind of person you're becoming.